What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be exposing some of the lies that are in this second grade general science textbook. This is part 3 of exposing lies in modern science curriculum. Make sure to check out the intro if you're new to this and watch the previous 2 presentations that I've done on this. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like material like this: creation versus evolution, biblical theology, end times eschatology. So stay tuned. I guarantee you by the end of the video, your head will be spinning and your mind will be bending. So don't go away. I'll be with you momentarily.
Even if you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night.
Sir, flex I do work. Work 6 of 'em like Mike. He's out of sight. Whoa, they got me pipe. You man like Ike. 6 out the spot.
Into the night.
Yeah, I'm shaking the drop. I'm still up on top. I've been at the bottom. The devil my op. Can't pay me to stop. My God at the top. We gon' praise our way out the grave, dog. Living, speaking, praise God. Walking out the graveyard back to life. I serve you. Follow your word. See with new sight.
Into the night.
So let's start with page 57 of this textbook here. Let me pull it up on the screen. I'm going to find it first, and then I'll pull it up on the screen for you to see. To be pretty small, but I'll also put it up next to the screen, and then I'm developing shorts of all of this afterwards. So stay tuned for that. Let me find the pictures here. See, that would be really small for you, but it says that bacteria have been found in 3 billion-year-old rock, and they are probably the oldest living organisms. 3 billion-year-old organisms. So second grade general science textbook, you're teaching them that this organism has been around for 3 billion years. Okay? I mean, that's... You see, if it was like that long ago, that they would be pretty sure about something like that. So I guess that they are pretty sure about that. If they're willing to teach it to a second grader, I mean, they're not going to disagree with you, right? You can basically convince them to believe anything. And make sure the audio is good on my end. We're all good. So page, what is that? 57 should be on the right page. Where was there we go. Bacteria have been found in 3.5 billion-year-old rock. They're probably the oldest living organisms. Okay, that's page 59 of this textbook. So, and then it goes on to describe the facts about organisms, what they do, what they consist of, but it briefly just summarizes how old that they think that they are. 3 billion years ago, So is that, an established fact that rock is 3 billion years old? Because they teach it to a second grader like it is. It's included in this list of other facts about the organisms. Some are rod-shaped, some are like balls. Some bacteria cause disease. Some can cause an infection if you scrape your knee. They help digest food, and some are used to clean up oil and spills. And so all these different kinds of things about organisms that are a part of the facts. And this will, hypothesis, if you want to call it that, I don't even think it's good. but 3.5 billion-year-old rocks, just because everybody believes that those rocks are 3 billion years old because of the content of, high levels of uranium in the samples, that doesn't mean that it's factual. It's actually, a collection of a bunch of fields of research, you know, and they come together to establish what is known as common ancestry. And so, based on that, is what this date is derived from. And the entire thing, when you deconstruct in each individual part, none of them have the evidence for evolution. Okay, it's like a shell game. You never know, where that thing's at. One person will say that like the archaeologist, he will say that the biologist has the evidence, and then the biologist should go to him for the evidence, and he'll say that the geologist has the evidence. The geologist will point to the paleontologist, so on and so forth. But I can assure you they didn't derive this from, a fact of science that those rocks are that old. Just started the Fountains of the Great Deep, or, a seminar on Earth and space science from the perspective of a global flood, and part one of that is on the origin of radioactive decay. So if you're interested in, that topic of the age of the rocks and such, you can go to the playlist, the Fountains of the Great Deep playlist, which I'll bring up shortly. But I just uploaded that video, so you can go there. And then I've also debated the topic "Was Snake Was Right?" You can check out the debate playlist. YEC Films, there's animation on the global flood there, which includes some of that material. And then the YEC Biblical Science Lessons, that's a good playlist where I have a video devoted to this topic as well. So we're going to move on to the next page. Okay, it says that the organisms are 3 billion years old because the organisms are in the lowest layers of rock, which, when radiometrically dated, generally all of the samples will come out to be, in the billions of years old. But, does that mean that the rock is billions of years old just because of the sample, the radiometric dating technique that you're using to get that age? Or is that coming on? Is that hypothesis? Is that based off of the idea that the organism is very old, that it lived billions of years ago? You really have to combine both of those, which there isn't evidence for either of them. You couldn't say that life just evolved from something that started out primitive, that came from some slime on the ocean. And that's, what common ancestry teaches. So, if you discount the radiometric dating techniques, then you have to find evidence that it's possible for life to just, first of all, emerge from non-living matter, and then has to then produce all the diversity of life that we see today. And it has 3.5 billion years to do it, approximately. You don't have evidence for either of those. A scientist has never constructed life from non-life, not even close. And then secondly, no animal has ever produced anything other than its kind. Those are two observable facts, in biology that are indisputable and have stood the test of time ever since I've been studying it, for like nearly 200 years. What's the next page? 135. Go. The peppered moth. Dark gray moths are better able to blend with the bark of the dark trees, and the light gray moths can only blend in with lighter bark. So you have a picture of a black moth and a picture of the peppered moth here. Now, this is a situation where there's peppered moths in this community, like in this forest. And then during the Industrial Revolution, they're burning all of this like coal. And then it's covering the trees dark. And so because all the trees are like darkened because of the coal, any peppered moth that has any offspring, which are coated, in full dark, they have no, they're not, they basically have to be fully black in order to match the color of the trees. They blend in better and camouflage so they don't get eaten or whatever, so they survive better. Now, so the offspring, there's a good chance you have a lot of these things dying, a lot of the peppered moths dying, but they have some offspring, that are just totally black, these mutant offspring, and it could be just perfectly beneficial, just the ability of an animal like a moth to produce a variety of itself is inherent in, just nature, just common nature, but it's still a moth, first of all. And second of all, yes, it's going to be able to survive its environment. It's going to have offspring that are different colors, and those black moths are going to be able to blend in with the environment. And so the peppered moths will die off and the black moths will overtake the population. When, that works, but it's still a moth. So yes, they use in the textbooks because it is a process that works. Natural selection does work. It produces a variety, and then, in certain conditions, like the dog develops really long hair and it gets trapped in, the North or the South Poles, maybe it'll be able to survive better, like colder regions, for instance. So yeah, it works, but it never changes like the dog into something other than a dog, a bacteria into anything other than a bacteria, or a moth into anything other than a moth. It's the same thing. Now, a major problem with this is that the peppered moth is developed from a straight up lie. Okay, they had to actually glue the dead black moths onto those trees to take the picture. I think in reality what happened is like all those moths end up dying. So it didn't even work. They can replicate it in the laboratory today where it does work, but it didn't happen in nature at that time. They still use that example though. There are other examples that they could use for natural selection working. I mean, we're seeing it all the time, but they choose this one, which was just a proven fraud. So why don't they get a better example? I mean, you shouldn't even have that. Maybe we won't get into that, but the peppered moth, I just think that that's silly, that they would even be using that. So this is just sad. This is a 2020 textbook, is using it to teach second graders general science. They're going to give them an example. They probably know nothing about this, but they're probably going to walk away because this textbook, provides evidence for common ancestry, evidence for evolution, and this is part of it. They're saying, well, because it's their fuzzy logic, because the moth can produce, the peppered moth can produce offspring that's totally black, and those black can survive in their environment and take over the population. Well, then, therefore, the moth and the banana are related, and that's crazy because that's not testable, observable, or demonstrable. I don't care how much evidence you think that you have, you don't have any of it because you can't produce a major change like that. You have to wait for millions of years for some unknown process of biology they even claim to not even be able to understand, that's using deep time and this minor alteration of the genetics to actually change major features of the DNA and structure of the animal. Never been observed. So, this is one small step to achieving that, but it's simply not enough. If you were to put it in a pill form, the level of confidence that people have in marketing this and it working and not being dangerous to people, it'd be very low. It'd be like you're on like 0.1. Okay. A scale 1 to 10, you're not even at 1 there. Okay. You need to have a certain level of confidence. You need to have compelling evidence, And so you could look at every field of research that they try to use to support evolution theory, common ancestry, macroevolution, and none of it, can stand up to close scrutiny. and it's certainly not stood the test of time. Now, let's move on. Page 152. If you want to join the chat, I got the link at the top of the comment section. Looks like a new chat came in from somewhere. Chris Lucas, what's up, man? At work listening. Jamie censored me. He's mad at my videos, but he's the one being dishonest. I'm just calling that, yeah. He's Seventh-day Adventist, you know. I don't know. I don't know what to do with someone like that. I don't really have a problem with him, but when you openly call out a Seventh-day Adventist, yeah, they're gonna react, and then they're gonna push it too far. And really, we're just gonna defend ourselves, you know, because if they're pushing us, that's what he likes to do, you know. I don't know. I seen like a back and forth between you two. Like you would upload a video against him, but then he uploaded one against you, and then you upload another one, and now he's trying to censor you. So it probably just escalated to the point where he's, I don't know, ashamed, or I don't know what's going on there, but God bless both of you. So where was I? 152. I'm going to pull that up here. It says that a fossil is evidence of a plant or an animal that lived long ago. All right, so based on, you know, some things we've already covered in this, you know, how things are like millions of years old, and how natural selection proves that the moths can evolve into, you know, something other than a moth. What do you think that means? Long ago. Well, it means millions of years ago. I'll show you. Let's continue to page 155. Page 155, it says about 300 million years ago, most of the plants on Earth were ferns, and these plants and others died and were buried under many layers of soil. It says on the next page that the bristlecone pine trees were growing 100 million years ago, and the oldest tree living today is almost 5,000 years old. Fossils show that these trees have changed very little. So no change, but, you know, they've been around for millions of years. So when it says that fossils are evidence of something that lived long ago, you know, it's not only the animals, but the plants that they believe to have lived millions of years ago. Okay, they think everything has been living and breathing on this planet over millions of years, and it's been changing, you know, like morphing. All the creatures have been just morphing into all these different kind of creatures just over millions of years. This has been happening. All right, let's keep going. $3.25. No, not that one. Let's go to 348. This is 348. Millions of years ago, this reef was home to corals and many other sea animals. So there we have it again. It really brings this up a lot, this millions of years thing, you know, when it starts when when it talks about the origin of these fossils, the origin of these plants, it always says, well, it lived millions of years ago, you know. And if they want to describe it, they will use like modern examples of the plants, or study it, and say that this is what kind of ecosystem it lived in and such, and all the facts that are associated with reefs or with sea animals or anything else. There's facts about the sea animals and the plants and the ecosystems. Okay, those are on the facts table. But then it's like, where did they come from? Where did they originate from? And they will just kind of sweep that under the rug with their famous phrase, millions of years ago, which, by the way, means long ago and far away. It's in their imagination, because that's the only place that this fairy tale ever actually happens. It's in their mind. They like it. They love it to be true because it allows them to escape the judgment of God. They don't like that, so they kind of discount it with, what they masquerade as science. It's just a pseudoscience, though, and that's just not me saying that, like most of the scientific community, believes in this pseudoscience, but does that make it accurate? Does the majority get to decide what is right and wrong, especially when you look at science itself? The history of science is just filled with basically a bunch of dumbasses that didn't know what they were talking about, because it's all been modernized, and a lot of the theories of 100 years ago just been completely trashed. So what about all the intelligence and stuff of those people who believe that big rocks fall faster than little rocks, or you should take out your blood in order to get better? It'll better your health to just remove your blood. That's where the red stripe on the barber's pole comes from, is because they were the bloodletters, and that's actually how George Washington died. They used to believe that the sun revolves around the earth, and that there's just so many things that they used to believe, and they've been disproven. So, there's paradigm shifts, but I'll tell you one thing. There's one paradigm shift, that just goes too far. It's beyond the line. It would take like a lot of money and a lot of political power to even overturn it at this point, because the agenda of evolution theory has overtaken the school systems. I mean, I showed you on part 1, you go check out the intro to this series, how the science curriculum in the county that I live in, for several grades, that shows that in the science class, when you're teaching science, there's courses, they're all laid out. And one of them is common ancestry. There's a course on common ancestry during one of the 4 semesters, that they have to take, in all of the grades 1 through 12. So several grades where it's required. Now, back to the topic at hand. Millions of years ago, the reef was home to corals and many other sea animals. So this ecosystem existed millions of years ago, where so far, we're over. I mean, there's nowhere in this textbook where it provides any evidence for that whatsoever, as far as the radiometric dates. And even if it did bring up radiometric dating, it would just summarize it, like it was a part of a fact, and it's not looked at objectively. Some things should just be taken out of the textbooks. That's what I believe. I think that if you're trying to keep creation in the textbooks, or get evolution out of the textbooks, what have you, you're just wasting your time. You just need to remove the lies that are in this textbook. So if you can, you're some kind of philanthropist and you want to change, the world of science and our education system, that's where you have to start, is just removing all of these blatant lies. And they're lies because they haven't been proven. They're just a part of a theory. It's not like a fact, and it would require great detail, in the information involved. Technical detail, rough stuff for these second graders to have to digest. So just needs to be taken out. It's not part of a fact that, organisms and stuff lived millions of years ago, or that they evolved. Now let's go to the next page. We're on 348. So we're going to 350, where they present the great geologic timescale. So in this time scale, it shows a Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Precambrian. So one-celled organisms, they believe, evolved into the body-planned ocean floor dwelling creatures. Okay, they got these different kinds of small organisms. Some of them are actually pretty big, like the trilobites, but they dwell on the bottom of the ocean floor. So certain animals live in certain ecosystems, and trilobites represent basically all of those animals, and you don't really find trilobites in any other place in the geologic strata. So, this is just the type of ecosystem that was buried. But you have, and and that's what these time periods mean. Okay, periods of evolution, and then extinction, where the population is reduced, and then it regrows into basically something else. It's punctuated equilibrium, but we won't get into that. They say that the single-celled organisms evolved into the trilobites and the other organisms living on the ocean floor. They eventually evolved into like reptiles, and then you had dinosaurs, and then the reptiles, they evolved into the mammals, and then eventually you have the evolution of the birds. And it briefly, summarizes what happened in each one of them. It says that in the Cenozoic era, the top one, humans first appeared during this era. So according to them, everything was already alive, and we just appeared on the scene, And it took us millions of years to evolve from the primates. That's what science teaches. It says that on that same page, it says trilobites were common at the start of the Paleozoic era. They died out about 248 million years ago, and that marks the end of the era. Dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago, and that marks the end of that era. So it summarizes all of this. And, that's like, is that something that a second grader needs to know? Because to actually objectively analyze that, it requires great detail. You need to move up in your education, give them some time to build up to that kind of information, because that is not something that I think should be taken lightly, and if it's not a fact, it doesn't belong in a second grade textbook. You need to summarize all of the different facts, what they can actually know. That's what science means: to test, observe, and demonstrate. So all this talk about millions of years in a second grade textbook is garbage, in my opinion. I think it just needs to be removed, and then the rest can remain in the textbook, and it'd be perfectly fine, but keep origins out of the situation entirely. It doesn't belong there. It's a religious idea. The only difference between creation versus evolution is that one of them is tax supported. Okay, and as soon as they get their tax money taken away, that religion would fall apart, because nobody is going to invest, in a private school where they can learn about how men evolved from a slime, which came from a rock, which came from a dot that exploded from nothing long ago and far away. That sounds like a fairy tale that should never be put in a scientific, journal. It needs to be put in the garbage, because that theory is trash. It needs to turn into a dumpster fire and roll down a hill. It is a really bad theory. It's not good. So let me try to summarize then why this is a bad theory. If anybody watching wants to join, you can still do that. You can click the link at the top of the comment section. I'll bring you in here. But first of all, if they want to talk about millions of years, let's talk about it. Millions of years. So the Big Bang. Let's just go back to the origin. Okay, if we're going to look at the Earth in the perspective of millions of years, well, then you want to find an origin point. Okay, the Big Bang, which they say singularity that produced, all the matter in the universe. This small point they say that it came from nothing. That's their theory. There's no God involved in it. And so, if you want to talk about the Big Bang Theory, you're not talking about like a God scenario. It's just they believe that it came from nothing, or it could have come from some multiverse or something. That's other theories out there. But the mainstream theory, the most popular take, the Big Bang is just that the singularity didn't come from anything. So that's not logical. Just, that's assuming, that the entire universe, you could concentrate it into something that small, smaller than a proton. You can't even see the thing. I mean, you couldn't get a bowling ball squeezed into a dot smaller than a period on a page. So that's not logical. That's certainly nowhere close to being observable. We see in the laboratory certain little specks that come in and out of just little particles, okay? But that's not, you're not getting like a speck of dust, the equivalent of a speck of dust, to just appear out of nowhere and fall on your little plate under the microscope. Like that never happens, never will happen. It's not possible. It just doesn't happen now. To really even establish it as a theory, though, you'd need something bigger than a grain of rice, which they haven't even produced, okay? So can't even produce a speck, not even a grain of sand, not even like a speck of dirt has ever been observed to come from nothing. That's not observable. I don't know why you would say that that's a theory. I mean, you could just settle for a hypothesis at this point, but they're too arrogant because there's so many problems with the Big Bang Theory. And the number one problem is that, the fundamental basic understanding of what is happening is all the matter coming into existence from nothing. All of everything, of the planets, everything just like squeezed in a little tiny dot. Now, nowhere close to observable. So the next step that you need is for all that matter that was dispersed, at light speed or whatever, however fast it was, into the universe, the vacuum of space. There's no gravity, there's nothing. So it's like an explosion. And then out of that explosion comes order. Because, I mean, I'm pretty sure even Stephen Hawking himself said that it's mathematically impossible that the universe was not designed. Yet he believes that it wasn't designed. I mean, he'll say that in his own book. It looks like the universe was designed, yet somehow it's not, and that's actually what gets him off, apparently, is, that everything that looks designed is somehow not designed. And so it's like a big magic trick, that likes to play with his mind, and he enjoys it, He's just like, give me more of that. And he keeps going with it and writes these books about how the universe looks designed, but, it's mathematically provable that it's designed. Not even a good chance that it wasn't, but it is, according to Stephen Hawking. Well, it actually is designed, is the thing about it. So Stephen Hawking was wrong. He's in hell right now. So he knows better now, but you have, nuclear fusion, okay, that has to happen. All this gas and dust needs to come together, and it needs to fuse in the vacuum of space. But it's never been observed in a laboratory for fusion to ever occur. You have to trap the energy. You have to get the fusion started, these small elements, fusing them together into heavier elements, and then you have to trap. I thought that was a spider's just fly. They do that all the time to me. You have to trap that energy, in a chamber, contain it, and so that energy is enough to continue the fusion process. Now, in fission reactors, which are what all the nuclear reactors in the world are, they operate on the breakdown of the element structure. And so you trap the energy that's breaking down, like the uranium, and then it just continually breaks down the uranium. It's the energy that is required to break the element down is trapped in a chamber, and so it doesn't go anywhere. It just stays in the chamber, continues to degrade the uranium. What you need for a nuclear fusion reaction, like a successful nuclear fusion reaction, which there is not one in the world, So what you would need for that is to trap that energy, use the energy, that's fusing the elements together and trap it. Never been done. And so how's it going to happen just randomly in the vacuum of space? Something would actually have to pull it together and fuse, all those stars. But it's not happening today as far as we can see. They believe that, nebula clouds are clustering together and forming stars. But, show me somewhere where, a gas in the vacuum of space is just clustering together, and then where is that happening? There's a lot of problems with stellar evolution, but number one, and this has stood the test of time since it's been researched, the number one problem for stellar evolution is that it cannot be observed. Not a single nuclear fusion reaction is observable. Sustained nuclear fusion reaction, I should say. And then thirdly, once you get the planets, after the stars fuse together, they explode, and all of that remnant of the fragment of the stardust, it accumulates and develops into planets. Well, then one of those planets produces life on its own from non-living matter. And that's the theory, of organic evolution, common ancestry. It includes this theory, this principle that says life came from non-life, even though it's never been observed since it's been studied for, probably over 200 years now. It stood the test of time that life had to be created. So a good explanation, because of the time that has elapsed and it's never been disproven, is that God created life, and the only person that can create life is God. So I don't think that they'll ever be able to produce life in a laboratory. But even if they did, that would prove that it takes intelligence to create life. Now, fourthly, I'm just giving all the problems with the billions of years idea, which they want to summarize. They just want to, glance all this by the kids, like it's a part of the fact, So we'll just try to scrutinize the overall theory with some basic principle thoughts, on different ways to prove the theory. You can't prove the universe came from nothing, it had to come from God. Okay. You can't, because nothing ever comes from something never comes from nothing. Number two, you can't, no one's ever seen a star form. It's never been observed. It's just like hypothetical that it happens with clouds of dust in space, but never in a laboratory. So number three is that life doesn't come from non-life. Number four is that kinds do not change. If you have a moth, it will stay a moth. If you have a bacteria, it will stay a bacteria. So just those four principal things, destroy evolution theory, because none of them are observable. And you need at least those four to have a high confidence level in the overall theory. So it's totally garbage. Just, if you have a kid in public school, just make sure they're aware of this. Make sure that they're not being brainwashed. Keep your children safe and strengthened in the Lord. And if you have a homeschooled child, God bless you, So you're in the right hands there. I think that that's basically the route that you should take. I don't believe that there should be even public schools, but if there are going to be, at least the children can be equipped by their parents if they're knowledgeable on this stuff. And certainly other people that are more, acquired, if you will, that can get involved in the politics of it should definitely fight to at least get these lives removed from the textbooks. So thanks for tuning in. Stay in prayer. God bless America. My name is Christopher Sylvius, and peace be upon you.